Good morning, I'm Carly. Welcome back to Farmer Analytics. Spring has finally arrived and we are so excited to have the sheep back out on pasture. It's been a long winter, many months in the barn, and we're finally back on the grass. It takes a while for our grass to get going here in Vermont, so waiting till May is pretty typical, and we don't really see that really good grass growth until June. Now, while this looks and feels like paradise out here, there are still some hidden dangers. Just above the soil line, still existing, are parasites. And those parasites are still surviving. Most actually can survive through the winter on pasture. A good amount of them will die off. They'll go through their life cycle, or they may even see temperatures that kill them off. But it is still safe to assume there are parasites at the soil level. In this video, we'll break down what happens when your sheep hit the pasture in spring, how parasites take advantage of that timing, and what you can do to protect your flock without relying on blanket deworming. Spring turnout is so exciting. There's better nutrition, fresh air, green grass, lower feed bills, but it's also when parasite risk ramps up. And as temperatures rise above 50 degrees and moisture increases, parasite eggs in the last year's manure start hatching. Larvae will crawl up grass blades just far enough to get eaten. And they use that moisture and actually the dewdrops on the grass to come out of the feces and sit there and wait for a sheep or goat to come along and ingest them. Now, if you turn your animals out onto pasture without a real plan for parasites, this might actually really hurt you for the entire season long term and will not set you up for success. So let's talk about how to make a plan going out on pasture and what that looks like. So I think the first thing to understand well is actually the life cycle of the parasites. So if we talk about Haemonchus contortus or barber pole worm, this one is really the one that would cause anemia, really shows great level of resistance to dewormers. And this parasite in just 21 days can turn your flock into a parasite mess. So first, the adult worms lay eggs in the sheep or goat's gut. And then the sheep or goat starts to pass these eggs through their manure, which ends up onto your pasture. Within 5 to 7 days, under moist, warm, ideal conditions, and even under less than ideal conditions, they start to hatch and develop into infective larvae. These larvae then climb up the grass using dew and moisture and wait to be eaten. Once they're ingested, they start to mature inside of the animal, and then the cycle repeats all over again with those new worms ingested starting to lay more eggs. If conditions are just right, this whole cycle can complete itself in less than a month. So this is where fecal egg counts come in. This can really be your best tool for helping you create a plan moving forward, heading into grazing season. By testing your sheep's manure, you can figure out which animals are shedding the highest amount of eggs and treat only those animals. Again, we want to leave the animals that aren't shedding high numbers alone so that they can keep a refugia population or a population of parasites that are not resistant to your dewormers. This is super important to keep the efficacy of your dewormers effective. So we recommend testing before your flock goes out onto pasture. Make sure everybody has good looking numbers. It's actually normal for your animals to hold some type of parasite burden, and this is okay for them to have low levels. So we want to leave those animals alone, let them do their thing, let their immune system keep working to keep those numbers down with them. So we recommend testing before you turn out on pasture, and then testing again 10 to 14 days later after everybody's been let out on pasture to check to make sure to see how everybody's doing on pasture and if they're picking up a significant load of parasites in their first month on pasture. By testing before they go out on pasture and a couple weeks after they go out on pasture, you can catch any high shedders before they become a real problem and before it really starts to affect their health. If you're not sure how to get started, check out our lab, Farmer Analytics, for fast turnarounds, easy to read results, and we can help you get a handle on knowing where your parasite loads are on your pasture, which animals need attention, and which animals are kind of good to just keep going as they are. Rotational grazing is your next best tool. And this is how we manage our flock. Here's a quick look at where we've rotated already. Here's rotation number 1, number 2, number 3, and then today's rotation here. And then all up this side is where we're going next. We're going to wait a few days for all of this to dry out. It is so oversaturated up here. We have had probably about 3 days of straight rain. So we'll hopefully have a couple sunny days coming up here soon, and we'll be able to come up here in drier conditions. You can see behind me, I have an electric net, and this is a net that we can move daily. Sometimes we even move it twice a day, depending on the length of the grass and how low they have break down. This electric netting lets us be portable as many times as we want, either daily or within a day. And the way that we are managing this grazing right now could actually be considered mob grazing, in the fact that they are confined to a fairly small space for the number of animals on here. Again, this all relates back to the density of your pasture, the quality of your pasture, and how quickly they're grazing it. But I would consider this mob grazing, since we are moving, at this point, moving this 1 to 2 times per day. For us on our farm, mob grazing is really helpful in the fact that the sheep and goats are not allowed to be picky, and they are confined to a spot that essentially forces them to eat what they have in front of them. This keeps our pasture fairly consistently mowed down. It keeps everything eaten back, and the sheep don't really have the option to be picky here. So if you have a larger grazing area than this and you're not moving them 1 or 2 times a day, moving sheep every 3 to 4 days is recommended, in the fact that you are assuming you're going to move them before those parasites are hatched and at the infective stage. And then also allowing this pasture to rest for 30 to 45 days, somewhere in there at least, is helpful to help break that parasite cycle. Most infective larvae can only survive for about a month without a host. However, there are many instances where this is shown untrue, and infective larvae can survive much longer than this on pasture. For us here in Vermont, last year we saw a greater drop in parasite issues when we more aggressively moved fencing in May and June specifically, mostly because of the height of the grass. The grass is already so short, but everybody's excited to get out and eat that grass. So we just move more aggressively, even though our pasture isn't really where we want it to be yet for grazing height and for soil health, and making sure we're not overgrazing so that the grass can come back just as strong. But moving fence and rotating more aggressively can help all of this, and for us in the past has helped with managing parasites, especially in the beginning of the season when we first get out on grass. Blanket deworming every sheep isn't just wasteful of dewormers, but it also can be really dangerous for your sheep flock health overall. It promotes resistance, especially in parasites like barber pole worm. And instead, we recommend using tools like FOMACHA scoring. And this can help you identify anemic sheep, and combined with that, with fecal egg counts, helps you to make targeted decisions, save you money, preserve the effectiveness of your dewormers, and keep your flock overall healthier. So here's some common mistakes that we see, especially at the beginning of grazing season. The first would be turning sheep out without testing or deworming selectively. And this can really be helped by using fecal egg counts to make smarter decisions about who to deworm and who not to deworm, and whether or not your sheep are in good condition to hit pasture. The second common mistake we see is grazing too short, forcing sheep to eat near the soil line. And all of this can actually be managed, even if you have short grass at the beginning of season, by aggressively rotating pastures and moving the animals quickly off of the pasture so that they're not grazing down too short. Mistake number 3 is keeping sheep on the same pasture for weeks at a time. Again, we recommend moving sheep every 3 to 4 days off of the same pasture, because that's when we see those parasites start to hatch and become an infective stage larva. If you can move them before they hit this stage, you are potentially avoiding ingestion of many infective larvae. Mistake number 4 is treating every animal just to be safe. And this can create long-term problems for you in the fact of creating resistance by overusing dewormers, and can also create resistance by getting rid of refugia populations that your low shedders are carrying, making sure that your dewormers are remaining effective over time. And while some of these habits might seem easier and take less time, they really just create long-term health and resistance issues. While spring pasture turnout is an exciting time, there's a couple things you can do to set yourself on the right path. That would be utilizing fecal egg count testing before and after putting out on pasture, using rotational grazing, using selective deworming, and really just making smart decisions based on parasite loads and the information that you have. Let me know in the comments below when you put your animals out on pasture and what you do to help protect them against parasites. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you next time.